Hello everyone. I'm not sure who is watching this video at this point, but hopefully if you are one of the Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell applicants at Notre Dame, you are uh, watching this video now if you were available. I'm going to go ahead and start in a couple of minutes just to give people a chance to arrive, because it just now turned to 11 a.m. But if you do have questions, or if you're having difficulty um, accessing this or having any issues, you can chat with me via Gmail at jthibert@nd.edu. That's the email address I've been emailing you all from. Also, you could just send me an email. I have my email program open here, so I'll be able to switch over and look at any emails that come in. So if you're having any trouble, let me know. So we will go ahead and wait just a minute or two to begin. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jeff Thibert. I am Assistant Director of National Fellowships in the Center for Undergraduate Scholarly Engagement, or CUSE, at the University of Notre Dame. And if you are watching this, it's probably because you are one of the Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell scholarship applicants this year at the University of Notre Dame. Perhaps you also just stumbled upon this through a YouTube search, and if that's how you found this, then welcome, and you probably will not be watching this for very long. I actually just got an email from someone who is watching. It says the video quality is great, so thank you, Sarah, for that. So apparently this is working, so I won't just be talking to myself, which is good to know. I'm hoping that in the future I'll be able to use this to give more interactive sessions where it'll be a little bit easier for people to ask questions, and we might even be able to do small group workshops or one-on-one meetings this way, but we can discuss that at some other time. So the goal really today is to talk about the Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell application and the application process in a little more detail. You may be watching this video later, not live, so this information should still apply to you, however. I guess I'll start by kind of walking you through the Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell application. I'm not sure if at this point anybody actually has registered for the online applications for these awards. You don't have to do that at this point because we do have the campus application process, which comes first. But just to give you a sense of what these applications are like, the Rhodes Scholarship application is essentially a list of what they call principal activities, which is kind of like a resume, but often takes the form of what you might think of as an expanded resume, where you list principal activities, and by that they mean only list the things that are really important that you would want to be asked about in an interview, for instance. And you will be able to give brief descriptions of those activities. And this can be up to 2 to 3 pages. So it doesn't have to look exactly like a resume. It doesn't have to take an exact resume form. I've seen winning applications where it was essentially just headings with bullet points underneath. They're basically using this to get a sense of what are the things that you've done, what kinds of things have you been involved in. So there's this list of principal activities, and you'll see that in the campus application you will be submitting something like this. It's called the list of accomplishments there, so you'll have this prepared. There's also the 1,000-word essay, which is what you all will have been working on and what you have hopefully already submitted a draft of on Monday of this week, Monday the 5th of August. And a personal statement is what it essentially sounds like, but we'll be talking in more detail about that later. And in fact, that's the bulk of what we'll be talking about today. So there's the list of activities, the 1,000-word essay, and then there are 5 to 8 letters of recommendation. And this is why in the campus application we ask for 5 to 8 letters of recommendation. And these letters should give a complete picture of who you are. So 4 of them have to be from people who have taught you. Ideally, these would be from professors you've had here, although they could be professors you've had during study abroad or people who've taught you in other kinds of situations. But that leaves 1 to 5 letters that can come, actually 1 to 4 letters, sorry, that can come from non-academics, non-professors. Now, you can have more than 4 letters from professors, but the reason they ask for 5 to 8 letters is to kind of flesh out this picture of who you are. So you have 4 letters that sort of demonstrate your academic credentials, and then you've got these other 4 letters where you can demonstrate other aspects of who you are, and that might include people who supervise you in service activities, leadership activities. You essentially want to pick the 5 to 8 people who can best speak to how well you fit the Rhodes Scholarship criteria, and we'll talk a little bit more about letters later on. That is essentially the Rhodes application. It's the letters, the essay, and the list. There's also an endorsement letter that the university provides, but that it's more of a cover letter for your application, and it doesn't generally have much of an impact on whether or not you are invited for an interview. I'm seeing that maybe the volume could be too loud, so if that is the case, you can let me know and I can try to adjust that somehow. I'm not seeing anybody chatting with me, but perhaps through email you could let me know if there's a problem. So that's the Rhodes application. The Marshall application is a little different, so I'll hold off on that for a second. The Mitchell application is very similar to the Rhodes application. They will ask for, it's not in exactly the same form, but they do ask for essentially a list of your activities. They want a 1,000-word essay. They only ask for 4 letters of recommendation, 2 of which have to be from people who have taught you. So there you have fewer letters to work with, and they do put a word limit restriction on those letters, which I believe is now 750 words, and I will be communicating that to your recommenders, since you all should have provided me with a list of recommenders by now. There are actually word limits on the letters for the Marshall and Mitchell scholarships, so I will make sure to communicate that to them, because especially if they are writing letters for you for multiple scholarships, it's possible that the Rhodes letter would have to be edited to be part of the Marshall application if it was too long, and I've seen that happen before. The Marshall scholarship application is similar in the sense that it will ask for a list of your activities and some basic questions. There are 4 letters of recommendation, 2 of which have to be from professors, 3 of which have to be from people living in the United States, which is perhaps something that will affect some of you. But I think what's most important to note about the Marshall application is that there are 3 essays. There's a 1,000-word personal statement, but then there's a 500-word essay on your proposed academic program. And if you look at the campus application, part of the questionnaire portion of that application asks you to talk about the reasons for choosing your proposed program, and that's why. That's material that you will be adapting into this 500-word essay if you're applying for the Marshall. And I'll give a little detail on that later. They also want a 500-word essay on what they call ambassadorial potential, and this is really important. I think sometimes it might not seem as important, but in fact it's really important for the Marshall Scholarship because it's the main thing that distinguishes the Marshall Scholarship from the others. They have an explicit interest. In fact, one of the criteria for the Marshall Scholarship is ambassadorial potential. And in the campus application, if you're applying for the Marshall Scholarship, question 3 on the questionnaire portion is essentially the prompt for the ambassadorial potential question on the Marshall Scholarship application. So that, because it is what makes the Marshall unique, it is very important that you have a good answer to that question. And so it's not just the essay, the personal statement, you have to worry about. With Marshall, there are these other 2 essays too. And so I think I just want to emphasize that those other 2 essays are just as important as the personal statement. Now, I haven't got any questions yet, so that's good, but feel free to email or chat questions at me at any time. Now, to say a little bit about the essay, because all of these applications ask for a 1,000-word essay, you want this to demonstrate to the reviewers whom you are. That's what you're trying to get across here. Often, these essays will start with a story that demonstrates a theme or themes that are relevant to you. You will very often see these things start with some kind of anecdote, not long necessarily, but an anecdote that makes some kind of point. And we'll be going through some examples of successful essays later, and you'll see how they all actually do this in slightly different ways. So there's some kind of opening that introduces a theme or makes some key points. Then often that theme or that main point is expanded upon, reinforced throughout the remainder of the essay by weaving in descriptions of significant accomplishments or relevant experiences you've had. And these are not going to be lists or expanded lists of things you've done. It's ideal if the accomplishments or the experiences really weave into the story. The essay also usually includes, and this often appears at the end, a description of how the scholarship and the programs you plan to pursue will enable you to achieve your goals, which are hopefully related to that theme that you've introduced at the beginning. And this is especially important for the Rhodes and Mitchell scholarships because for those, you won't have another space in the application to talk about why you're interested in certain programs. For the Marshall, you will. So you don't have to say quite as much about it in the personal statement. But for the Rhodes and Mitchell, you've got to say something in there about why Oxford and why a particular program. You don't have to say a lot. For many people, it's just one paragraph, but they do want to know, what you plan to do when you go there. Now, what I just described is not a surefire formula. You will see many essays take that form, but there are many ways to approach the essay. And what is most important is to tell an interesting story. You don't just want to run through your accomplishments, your experiences. You want to show how your accomplishments, how your experiences fit together into a narrative. And this might mean leaving some things out. You are probably not going to talk about everything that's important to you in the essay. You have to think about what's going to sort of serve the story you're trying to tell here. Thank you, Tom McGuire just got an email saying that the volume is fine, so I feel that's really a boost to my confidence, and I appreciate that, Tom, so thank you. Keep those comments coming, especially if they're positive. as I was saying, there are many ways to approach the essay. You're really trying to tell a story, and you want the reviewers to think, we have to talk to this person. After you read the essay, you, yeah, first, I'm just getting an email here um, with a question. The chat isn't working, so that's something I'll have to probably look at later. So maybe if that's not working, be sure to use email for now. It's a question about the interview process, and I will skip ahead and just answer that now before I forget. The question is essentially, once you get to the interview process, the application, the written application, is sort of thrown out the window. And this actually does tie into what I was saying. So let me approach it this way. You want the reviewers to think, after reading your application, we have to talk to this person. You want to make sure that they remember your application after reading 50 or 100 applications. You need your story to stand out in some way. Now, that doesn't mean you have to make it crazy or do some weird format, but what it means is that you have to tell a compelling, interesting story. There's got to be some kind of hook, and I think that's why often an opening anecdote can be useful, because I've heard people on the selection committee say they will kind of remember people by, oh, this is the Uganda person, or oh, this is the person who founded this organization in Asia, or something like that. They will kind of have these hooks that they use. If you're telling a sort of a story that other people could tell, then it's probably not going to stand out. You really want this story to stand out. And what is important to note there is that it's much about how you tell the story. It is, of course, about your accomplishments and your experiences, but a lot of this is about how you frame it, how you tell it. And that's what we are here to help with. And that's why we have you turn in these drafts early, so we can kind of think about how you're telling your story. Now, in terms of the written application mattering when you get to the interview, if you get an interview for one of these, at that point, pretty much everybody is equal. The idea is that the sort of playing field is leveled again. Now, it's probably true that, in fact, it is true, it's just a fact, that people on the committee who are interviewing you, they will be the people who have chosen who to interview. So they're probably going to have their favorites going in. That's pretty likely. And it is possible that one of them might not have preferenced you for an interview, maybe, but everyone else did, so you got the interview. So, it is a level playing field at that point, but what you write in the application does matter for the interview, because it is very likely that their questions will revolve around what you talked about in your essay, especially in your personal statement. They will probably ask you about experiences you've had. They might want to hear more about certain things. They might have sort of ethical or more abstract theoretical questions about things that you raise in the essay. So it is in a sense true that the written application is kind of thrown out at the interview, and that they're really going to be making the decision about who receives the awards based on the interview once you get to that point. But what you write in the application is going to determine often the course that the interview takes, because that's what they know about you. So that's what they're going to ask you about. They're going to ask about things that are in your application. So if you raise some point, for instance, this has happened to people where they might raise something about their Catholic faith, say that they're motivated to pursue social justice, for instance, through their faith. So if that comes up in the personal statement, then you could expect them to ask questions about, reconciling social justice with faith, and are there certain things within that religions do that seem to counteract social justice, and how do you reconcile? You could expect those kinds of questions if you bring it up. And so it's important to think about, anything you put in that application, they might ask you about. So they're going to probe some of those things. So don't put anything in there that you sort of couldn't expand upon, or that you wouldn't be comfortable expanding upon. So feel free to send more questions through email, and I'll acknowledge that I've received them so that you know even if I don't answer them right away. So the point of the personal statement is to make sure essentially they remember you. Make sure that you're telling an interesting story that shows how you fit the criteria. And I think what I would like to do now is go through and look at some essays from past years. And these are essays where uh, these people have gotten interviews, essentially. They didn't end up receiving the award in the end, but they were invited to an interview, and that is the primary purpose of the written application. So what I'm going to do here, and I tested this and this should work, I'm going to replace the video with an image of these essays, and if you might have to make the video bigger to be able to read the text. It's possible that it will be blurry, so I will make these available in another form to you all afterwards, but hopefully you will be able to see this. So let's give this a shot. Let's see, go here, and I will share it. Hello, I think I had an error there, and I think I might have lost you for a minute, but I think I am back and broadcasting again. So you can email me if there are problems with this, but let me try to share the essay again. Okay, I see the essay in the video window, so hopefully this is working. If you can't see me, then hopefully you'll be emailing me soon. So this is, again, an essay that was successful in the sense that it received, the person who submitted this essay did get an interview. And again, I'll make these available to you in some other form so you can look at them in more detail. But I want you to kind of briefly see the approach that this person took. And so you'll see here at the beginning, the story introduces two experiences this person had. It kind of weaves them together while also introducing the theme, which is an interest in human trafficking and wondering why it isn't basically a bigger deal, wondering why the problem doesn't get the kind of publicity that it could. And you'll see that these things come up because this is involved with the work that the person is doing at the time. So this initial story kind of weaves together this experience as an RA, a sort of immediate experience. Thank you, Alexander and Sarah, for letting me know that everything is okay and you can see the essay. So, so far, so good. So you'll see that what the person does, which I think is sort of clever, is weaves together this kind of immediate story. And that opening is great. A question that punched me in the gut. That's a strong opening. That's a hook. I'm being asked if I can zoom in a bit, and I can try. I think I can maybe do this. Let me see. You might also just have to do this if you can make it full screen somehow. I'll kind of make it as big as I can while still fitting in the video window here. Okay, I think that's about the best I can do. This opening, it has this immediate experience connected to this interesting experience the person had in a Uganda study abroad program, and you'll see here that this is brought up in a way that seems natural. This isn't just kind of listing something cool this person did, but directly connects to the story the person is telling. And then it talks about something that happened. It also connects it to a class that the person had related to human trafficking. So you see that even in this first paragraph, a lot of experiences are being raised. And we're not getting huge amounts of detail about all these experiences here, and that's okay. But you're getting these experiences out there. These might even be things that get expanded upon in some of the letters of recommendation. For instance, remember that you don't have to say everything. If you know that one of your recommenders is going to say a lot, for instance here, about the Uganda Study Abroad program, then maybe you can just reference it, say a little bit about it, and know that the details are going to come in a letter. This is all part of a package. And for Rhodes, I think this is especially important because you get 5 to 8 letters. Okay, so the first paragraph really introduced the theme, and it ends, I just couldn't believe there'd be such a dearth of documentation if the problem was as bad as she said it was. And then we go back to the initial story that introduces things, and the second paragraph ends again with this interesting point sitting right there next to me, was proof that this assumed positive correlation didn't hold water. Goes on, now introduces the work that the person is currently doing. So you'll see that what we're getting here is a clear focus. I'll back up a little bit here so you can see some of this. What you're getting here is a clear focus on this particular issue. So far, all we have heard about is this person's, the sort of motivation behind this person's interest in human trafficking. And you'll see that this person continues to introduce, I'll just say she, I'm not actually sure who this is from, but I'll just say she, so I don't keep saying this person, it makes it awkward. You'll see how she keeps on talking about different experiences. We have Memphis, we have Myanmar boys in Bangkok. So, we're getting these experiences in here, but she's tying them together into a story, and this is the first page. And we go on. It's not until here in the second page where we start to hear a little bit about why Oxford. So what this person does, what she does, introduces the motivation behind her issue, the thing she cares about, and then we get essentially a paragraph here explaining why Oxford. And this person says, she says, I must attend this rigor. I must attend. And you don't have to necessarily use language like that, but you see she's making the case that this is important. This program is especially unique. And again, note, there's only a paragraph here about why Oxford. There's only a paragraph here about the program. That's okay. They know that you've only got 1,000 words and you're not going to be able to say a lot. Now, I'm going to scoot ahead a little more. So you can see this last paragraph here, where, again, we kind of return to the initial theme, this Professor Nordstrom who came up in the first paragraph. We return to this theme, and it's likely, I'm not sure about this, but it's very likely that one of the letters was from Professor Nordstrom, and that that she could expand upon a lot of the things that came up here in the essay. But you see how it ends with this thing that returns back to the theme, which again was, why aren't people noticing this? And it ends with, I want to notice. So there's a nice coherence to this thing. The end really takes you back to the beginning. It all fits together into a coherent story. I did get another question, and I'll answer that in a second. The other things I want you to notice here are the conversational tone that we see. This is not written for, there's contractions in here, for instance. There are some figures of speech. I'm backing up a little bit just in case you didn't see this. I'll scroll back down in a second. But you want your voice to come out here. You want a person to emerge. It's a personal statement, so make it personal. This is not a research paper. It's not a formal essay. There's a genre of writing called, you've probably heard of this, but maybe you haven't, creative nonfiction. And that's essentially what you're doing here. This is nonfiction. You're telling your story, but you're telling it in a creative way. And one thing you might try would be reading examples of personal essays. you might be able to find in the library or online, these books, The Best American Essays of 2010 or 2011. There's one called The Best American Essays of the Century. And you might read through these to get a sense of some of the styles people take when they write these personal essays. Now, you'll see that those essays, of course, have their own focus, but yours does too, and you might kind of pick up something from looking at those. So again, this person here, she's telling an interesting story, and I think what I find most interesting about this one, sorry for all the scrolling, I don't mean to make you dizzy. What I find most interesting about this one is that it's all about this person's interest in human trafficking. We aren't getting anything about anything else, really. It's very focused on explaining where the interest in human trafficking came from, what the question is she wants to address. And of course, she never says in here, I want to fight the world's fight. I don't think, I want to fight the world's fight by addressing human trafficking. But this is clearly an important issue, and she clearly does want to fight the world's fight. And again, this is a Rhodes essay. But you could see this being adapted to a Marshall essay, a Mitchell essay, relatively easily. So maybe a big lesson to take from this, one, the tone, conversational, not informal, but not overly formal either, sort of intelligently conversational. And also, not feeling like you have to bring in every single thing you've done. I can guarantee this person is leaving important things out. She has other interests. There's really nothing about personal hobbies in here at all, other thing. That's fine. But this is what's most important to her right now, and that's what she's going to talk about. So I think that's why this essay is particularly interesting. Now, I've gotten some questions here. Let me check things out. Here we go. I had a question about the... Okay, one question is, do you recommend that we ask to read all of the recommendation letters so as to make sure our essays fit well? That I would not necessarily recommend. And that's largely... I mean, if a recommendation letter writer wanted to share the letter with you, that's really up to them, and that's up to them and you. These letters are typically supposed to be confidential, and the reviewers read these letters assuming that they are confidential. They prefer that they know that they're getting an objective evaluation because the applicant never saw the letters. So I wouldn't recommend that you read all the rec letters, but what I would recommend is that you have an idea of what... I'll turn the video back on momentarily right now. Let's see, it might happen automatically. Yeah, there it is. Hi, it's me again. So I would recommend that you know what the letter writers are writing about, essentially. I don't think you have to know every detail. You don't have to read the letters, but make sure you know, and really know why you've asked them to write the letters. And you may even, tell them this. You have probably already formally asked these people, but you can coach them a little bit. You can give them a sense of what you hope they would focus on. Got one more question, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, make sure they know kind of why you're asking them. And so it is important to know, for instance, if a certain professor you had is going to talk a lot about a class you took, then you do not have to talk a lot about that class. Even if it was really important to you, you might reference it, and you don't have to say, as discussed in this letter, but know that the committee, they're going to hear about this class somewhere else. And you don't have to know exactly what the person says. It's not like you have to be on message necessarily, but I do think it helps to know what the kind of things that are going to be covered in these letters. Again, if you sometimes recommenders will ask you to read the letters. Oh, did I leave anything out you want me to talk about? And that's really between you all. And if I notice some glaring issue with the letters, I can approach the recommenders, and that can be anything from a typo to something else. But yeah, I don't think you should necessarily feel that you have to read all the letters. Another question here is, this person liked the Why Oxford paragraph a lot in the essay I just showed, but wasn't sure how to incorporate that into the Notre Dame personal statement, since that's for all 3 applications. Should it be a quicker discussion or make it a few paragraphs, 1 for each program? That is a great question, and it is one of the tricky things about having this kind of unified campus application for 3 different awards, and some of you are just applying to 1, some are applying to 2, some are applying to all 3. And what makes it weird is, of course, the Marshall, that it has this separate essay. So what I would suggest is that you write the essay that you submit as part of the campus application with the Rhodes or Mitchell in mind. So you might end up, and what you might do is you might yourself produce slightly different versions, but I would write it with the Rhodes or Mitchell in mind. So I would briefly talk about, for instance, if you are applying for the Rhodes, it's okay there, I think, to focus on Oxford, because one is because the Rhodes essay is so important and the Mitchell essay is so important. That's the kind of thing I want you to be working on now, because of that 1,000 words, every word has got to count. So I don't want you to have to go back and be messing with that section later. So I would write it with the Rhodes or Mitchell in mind, especially, Rhodes probably, because I think most of you, if you are applying for the Mitchell, you're also applying for the Rhodes. But the reason I think that's okay is because you'll see in the questionnaire, if you haven't seen this yet, questions 1 and 2 ask you to elaborate on why you're choosing the program. So the internal committee will know why you're choosing certain programs. So they will get this information. I think for now the personal statement can just focus, write it as if it was for the Rhodes or for the Mitchell. That would be my advice. They're going to get the information about what you're going to do with the Marshall. And then when you go to apply for the Marshall, you'd have the separate essay to talk about that. And then what you'd probably do is adjust the personal statement a little bit to kind of pull out the Rhodes or Mitchell specific stuff. And I know that's not, it's going to take some playing around, and you're going to kind of have multiple drafts of things, but I think that is the best way to approach it. But if you do the essay and you answer all the questions in the questionnaire, the committee will get the information that they need to see. Somebody is asking a question about basically which region to apply to, and this is something that we can talk more about later. You may know this. Mitchell does not have regions. It's a national competition. There's no regional selection process for the Mitchell Scholarship, but both the Rhodes and Marshall have regional selections, and I believe Marshall has, now I'm of course forgetting the exact number, but I believe it's 8 regions this year. It might be 10. That's easily checked on the website. The Rhodes has 16, and I think they've had 16 for many, many years. And what ends up happening is that the Mitchell will pick 2 or 3 people from each region, and the Rhodes will just pick 2 people from each region. So essentially, for both of those, you're not competing against everyone who applies. You're just competing against the people who apply in your region. So what this means is often people will wonder if they should be kind of strategizing this a little bit, because you can choose the region that your university is in. So you could choose to apply in the region that Indiana is in, or you could apply in the region of your permanent residence if that's different. So, if your family was living in, I think in this case the person is asking about Nevada. Um, um, it really would have to be it's your permanent residence, whatever that would be. So for many students, their permanent residence is where their family lives, and that might be this region, it might be a different region. The official line from Rhodes and Marshall on this is that your chances should be equal no matter what region you pick. That they try to set up the regions in a way where where it's basically equal odds in any region. It's not like if you had applied to a different region, you would win. And you might think, well, wait a minute. There are some really great schools, like Harvard and Yale they're in the same region, and Princeton, all this place. And then, Stanford and Berkeley are, similar. They might be in the same region. Well, that doesn't make sense, But of course, these other great schools, and Notre Dame does this too, they will be sending their people to all different regions. In fact, that is part of the reason why those schools are often successful in these competitions, is because they're able to send people in most of the regions, and so they have sort of competitiveness in every single region. So because of that, you can strategize if you want, but it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen in the end. I mean, from an institutional standpoint, honestly, it's better for Notre Dame if we spread out the regions, because then you're not competing against one another, and it increases the chances that Notre Dame people will get interviews. But in the end, it shouldn't matter. It's kind of up to you. I mean, there's no official advice on that. What might end up happening is that once we know who all is endorsed, maybe we can have a conversation about which regions you all are in, and maybe it will make sense to kind of place you in a region where you won't have to be competing against one another, and it shouldn't change your odds at all, but it might sort of change. Well, it'll change the odds that you'll be competing against a Notre Dame person, and that might make it more likely that you'll be willing to help one another. So that's a good question, and it's a tricky one, but that's sort of the answer I have right now. Somebody's asking if I can send that essay and any others we look at as resources for you all to have. I can do that, yeah. What I will say is that I will do that, and you can't share them. We have permission to, to share these essays with people sort of individually, but I wouldn't want them posted online or emailed to anyone else. So you would keep these for your own use, and ideally, once everything was over, you would delete them. You don't have to print them out and shred them just for effect, but I would like if you would delete them. But these people have agreed, and you will agree actually as part of your campus application to share any material that you submit with future applicants. You can opt out of that, of course, but that is a helpful resource to have. Somebody asks, do you recommend giving recommenders a working draft of our personal statement? And yes, I highly recommend giving your recommenders drafts of your personal statement or the rest of your application in the Marshall case. Two reasons for that. One is it might help them to make sure they're not saying anything that conflicts wildly with something you're saying in the essay. If you're saying that you single-handedly provided water to a village somewhere, and they're saying that you were just one of 100 people as part of this project, then that's good for them to know. But that was kind of a joke. The other reason, though, is that maybe then you can get feedback from them. Not everybody will have time to do this, but it would be great if your recommenders were additional eyes. You're going to be getting feedback from us as part of this process. Not only me, I'll be giving you all feedback, but other people in CUSE here will be helping you with feedback. But honestly, get feedback from whoever you can, and your recommenders would be great. Plus, it helps them feel, I think, invested in your application if you involve them more in the process. And honestly, it might mean that they're willing to put in a little bit more time on your letter. And as I'll say in a little bit, these letters are hugely important to your application, just as important as your essay, maybe more so because you don't have as much control over them. So, yeah, I would definitely share things with them. I will say, if you do, one drawback of getting a bunch of feedback is that you're going to get feedback that contradicts, where somebody will say, "Oh, I love this part. Don't ever delete this part." And another person will say, "I hate this part. Get rid of it." It might not be that drastic, but you'll see things like that. And in the end, and this is a good general point, in the end, this has got to be authentically you. You've got to be happy with this. We can give you feedback, we can have suggestions, but in the end, this is your voice, this is your story. You've got to do what feels right to you. You've got to be happy with what you submit. So, you might get contradictory feedback, but, in the end, go with what feels right to you. I think that that's most important. So, yeah, definitely share. I'd share your essays with anybody who is willing to read them, because the reviewers will be, many of them are former Rhodes Marshall Mitchell scholars, but there are also diplomats, there might be business leaders. So, you'll be getting they're not all going to be professors. So it can help if you get a wide range of people to look at your stuff, because you'll see how it appears to a wide-ranging audience. Okay, another question. Is there a limit to the number of students that Notre Dame can endorse? And the answer is no, there's no limit. For some scholarships, like the Churchill Scholarship, Truman Scholarship, Goldwater, there are others where there are limits. So we have to nominate select numbers of people. For the Rhodes, Marshall, and Mitchell, there's no limit. So we could endorse everyone. What will typically happen is that the committee will only endorse people who they think have a realistic shot at getting an interview, and we try to get people on the committee who, I don't have the exact composition of the committee yet, but the people who have done the committee in the past have been people who either have been Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell scholars, or people who have experience studying in the UK or have knowledge of the UK. So we try to get people who would be able to say, yeah, this person, it seems like they would succeed. It's unlikely that everybody would be endorsed, because they kind of don't want you, wasting your time, and they may suggest other avenues that would be useful to you. But there's no limit. So in theory, everybody could be endorsed, and that'd be fine with me. Okay. I'm hoping to not push this too much past noon, although I guess we could. It's really up to how long you're willing to stay here. I see 9 people are watching, so hello, 9 people. Let's look at another essay. How about that? That sounds fun. Okay. Hopefully this won't crash everything again. Oh yeah, it looks like it's working. Okay, so this was, I'll try to blow it up here a little bit. Okay. So this person also received an interview. I'll call this person he, since the other person was she. And I don't think there's anything in here that makes it clear. This person, I want you to notice that the opening paragraphs, again, set up a kind of theme and explain this person's motivation with some interesting stories. And you'll see the first essay sort of did that too. We were looking at the person sort of wanted to explain how they got interested in a particular question related to human trafficking, and those stories they raised were meant to do that, while also bringing in experiences they've had. Here, this person is trying to explain their 2 passions. And so their hook is here at the beginning. I want to do this. I want to do this. These are my two passions. They converge in my study of economics. So we see that initially, at least, the story we're going to get here is I care about service. I care about learning. And I think this is common to many people, who apply for these things. And we're going to get the story of how they converge in my study of economics. Because, of course, you see this first paragraph and you're going to say, how? Well, that's what we're going to get. We're going to get this story. So we get the backstory now on the passion for service, and then the third paragraph is the backstory on the passion for learning. And again, this is not, this person is going back to middle school. So we're not getting, the full backstory, but we're highlighting an experience. Began in middle school, South Bend Center for the Homeless, boom. Real impact. Again, not long, not a ton of detail, but it's kind of evocative. Seeing the children there giggle at me, we're getting an evocative story here. That could even probably be more evocative. But my passion for learning. Here we get a really nice story. Grandfather's not begging for another problem. Growing older, math problems. Here we're kind of seeing how this person's interest in math really developed, which is going to lead us into his interest in economics. Now, remember, what he's trying to do here is tell us how they converge, how these two passions converge. Well, formerly, you didn't see much connection, but here, he's going to talk about an experience he had, which is going to be one of these, what I kind of call literally outstanding experiences. And what I mean by that is that these are experiences that will literally make you stand out from other people. Not that other people won't have been to Uganda, but this is something that's kind of unique. So here, this story helped this person see the connection, right? Teaching in Uganda, how service and scholarship can come together. And so now we get, again, overflowed, chalk snapped, pockmarked chalkboard, no money, grapple with the frustration. Boom, the problem of poverty. So he's seeing, okay, service, learning, these come together in the problem. This is how he's going to fight the world's fight. Just like with the other person, it was pretty clear from the beginning human trafficking was the issue. Here, we see, we're not even through the first page, we see that really the problem here is going to be the problem of poverty. How's he going to address it? As an economics professor. Boom. We go on. And now, what is, again, interesting about this essay, too, is it really, much of the rest of it focuses on explaining the problem that he's talking about. So a lot of this starts to sound kind of academic. Now note, there aren't references here. It still has the flavor of an essay. It still has a not overly formal tone to it. But okay, so the question is poverty and economics. Well, that's a huge question. So he knows people are probably going to want more detail. So one particular question, development aid, the role it plays in combating poverty. He's referencing Sachs and Singer here to show that he kind of knows some of the literature here. And he's using this to help flesh out the problem that he has in mind. So here's the problem. Here's something that people have said. Now, what's his contribution going to be? Well, this is this paragraph here at the top. Again, he's bringing in another William Easterly, another person, to show that he knows something. But he says, my thesis draws on the mathematical tools of decision theory. So this connects us back to his interest in math. Oh, that's why he talked about math. And his thesis, his idea. This is what he is going to do that is particularly interesting and unique. And, he says, I'm going to be an economic expert, but I don't want to lose sight of these philosophical questions either. And I think he's also concerned with public discourse. This connects his work to service. You don't want to lose sight here of the fact that his issue is going to help people. And with the Rhodes in particular, one of the criteria is essentially serving the weak and oppressed. And so it's clear how he's planning to do this. Now, again, we get more development here about what he's going to do within economics. So he's kind of said what he has done, what his thesis is. Here's how he's going to develop it. And then this goes on at the last paragraph here at the end, which I'll scroll up to in a second. We have why Oxford in this case. Well, he needs this program, and here's why he says, whereas PhD programs in economics, because you can get great PhD in economics here in the US, whereas PhD programs feature development economics as one subject among many others, Oxford MSc places development study at its core. And then he says, at Oxford, I would not only acquire this, but that. And he goes into some more detail. There's interdisciplinary stuff there, a lot of interesting people, blah, blah, blah. This is why Oxford. And that's how he ends it. And then the last line, I would progress immeasurably, and he reminds us of the goal he has in mind. So again, and I can make this available to you all too. But again, you'll see that he's not talking about a million different experiences here. This is not a laundry list of things he's done. It is a discussion of how he became interested in a particular issue, and sort of personally how he became interested in a particular issue, how that interest developed, how it will develop, what is he going to do, how is he going to address this problem. And it's very active. My thesis, I'm going to do this. And then how does Oxford fit in to all of this? I'm getting a note that the video stopped. Let me see here. I'm still seeing 5 viewers. 4 viewers. People are kind of dropping away, so I think something might have happened to the video here. Now I'm getting back up to 5. Video is back. Okay, 7. The number's climbing. I think that was just an issue with the video. If the video does go down for you, you might try refreshing the page or something like that to get back into it. I will hopefully these connectivity issues won't be as big of a deal in the future. So anyway, that was the second essay. Just to kind of recap what I was saying, because the video did cut out. You know, what I think you can take away from this is, again, there's a focus on a particular issue. Why this person became interested in this issue, what this person is going to do to address it, and then why Oxford. They're not talking about a million different things. We don't get, in fact, the only kind of service-y experiences we get here are the South Bend shelter and the Uganda teaching. So that's important to note. Yeah, some people's video never stopped. If it does stop, and I'm getting some confirmation on this, I think people just have to refresh their screens when the video stops. So make sure to do that if it stops again. Looks like I might have lost one person now, so hopefully they will come back. Or maybe they had to go. 8. We're back up to 8. Everyone's back. Welcome back. Number 8. Number 7. Just dropped to 7 again. Okay. So we'll leave it at that to kind of keep this near an hour. We'll leave it at that in terms of essays that we're going to look at. But I hope that it's instructive to see these. Now, I don't, again, there's not a formula, and there are probably plenty of essays that get written like that don't win. But those people got interviews. And what I should say is that in both those cases, you saw that it was clear how the person saw themselves fighting the world's fight. And it explained why that's their fight, how they became interested in that fight. Talked a little bit about things they have already done or are doing to fight that fight. And then talked about how Oxford and the Rhodes, and this would apply to the Marshall, any of these things, how it's going to help them continue to fight that fight and hopefully become a leader in fighting that fight. So, think about that as you're writing your own essay. You can format it however you want, but that's the kind of information that's often useful for people to see. They want to get a sense of who you are and why you care about the things that you care about. And again, you're going to probably want to talk about 12, 15 different things you've done. That usually isn't helpful because you often won't be able to go into enough detail about any one of those things. And so it'll seem too much like a list, and they won't get a lot of sense of you. So, think about the things that are most significant, or again, that fit the story. If if your story, if your theme is going to be um, why you became interested in a certain issue and how Oxford fits into that, or wherever you are interested in going, LSE, Cambridge, Sheffield, any place, um, you know, it's okay to be focused on that. You'll have the list of activities, you'll have lists to kind of talk about other things you've done, and you will have letters. It's possible that something will come up in a letter and you don't have to talk about it at all, that somebody will, bring it up in a letter. Now, a couple more things before we go. Um, One, the Marshall essays. So that's all personal statement stuff. The Marshall has two other essays, as I said, 500 words each. One is proposed academic program. And this should go into detail about why you want to pursue a particular program or programs. For the Marshall, it's typically a 2-year award. There's a 1-year version. If you're applying for that, fine. But if you're applying for the 2-year, you have to say what you're going to be doing over those 2 years. And often people will say that they're going to do 2 1-year programs over the course of those 2 years. So make sure that you talk about everything that you're listing there. And be specific and make clear that you know the program and you have good reasons why that program, out of the hundreds in the UK alone, is the one for you. So make sure it's clear why the program is outstanding in your view, not only among UK programs, but really among programs in the world. And make sure to save a few sentences for your second choices. You really should have second choices, because often the first choices don't work out, and if you didn't list second choices, sometimes that's it. So please make sure you list alternate choices and take a few sentences to say why those are your second choices. You don't have to give as much detail, but give a little bit of time to that in that essay. The ambassadorial potential Marshall essay is very important, and my key advice here, they've changed the prompt this year. So it's a different prompt than people have had in the past. But I think this prompt is better, frankly, because it's much clearer about what they want. It's much more straightforward. They want to hear about how you view this special relationship and how you see yourself connecting the US and UK throughout your career. So talk about what you're going to do when you're there to kind of advance this special relationship, to build connections between the US and UK, and think a little bit about what you're going to do throughout your career to build a connection between the US and the UK. That's hugely important to Marshall, and if you do not have a good answer for this essay, they probably won't interview, even if your other stuff is great. If you give no indication of your ambassadorial potential, and it doesn't mean you don't have to say that you been an ambassador. They're looking for some demonstration that you can be. That's why it says potential here. They want to see that. And I should also say, it can help if you can weave in some details about current events in the UK, especially related to the US, and current developments in your field that are connected to the UK. I worked with someone, I was at University of Arizona before coming here, and I worked with someone there who got a Marshall interview. And he was interested in development economics. And he did a wonderful job, I thought, of explaining how the tradition of work and development economics is particularly rich in the UK. And that was a good explanation of why the connection to the UK was important, because that's so much of the important work is sort of collaborative between the US and the UK. He had very specific reasons that were kind of personal, but also related to his field. They don't want to hear things like you want to see Big Ben or the Tower of London or the Gardens at Kew or anything like this. But so they're not interested in touristy stuff here. They really want a kind of a genuine reason why you would love to live in the UK for a year or two and really build this connection and sustain it throughout your career. So show them that you have thought about this and that you're excited about it. You don't have to exaggerate, but give them a sense that you care, because that's part of the Marshall um, mission. Um, so a couple final things. Probably take another 5 to 10 minutes if that's okay with you. um, both essays I showed you, you'll note that none of them are they're great, but they weren't like stunning. They weren't amazing. I mean, you're capable, I think, of writing an essay like that. But I guarantee you that writing those essays, they seemed a little bit effortless, but those essays probably went through many drafts. I worked with someone last year who won a Mitchell scholarship. Her essay went through probably 30, I think, drafts in the end, and not all of those. I didn't see all those drafts. Some of them were just for her, but you know, you want the thing to seem effortless and coherent and nice, but it's going to take a lot of work to get it there. So you do still have time, of course, but I think you're probably capable of producing an essay like that. But they did tell compelling stories, I think, and that's what you want to do. And I also want to note that you're not seeing the majority of the application, which are the letters. You get 1,000, maybe 2,000 words in these applications. Well, your letter writers could get 4,000, 5,000, depending on how many letter writers you have and how many letters they write. They're going to get many more words to talk about you, and you aren't seeing those. And so the recommendation letters play a major role, and they really need to be excellent. And it will help if the letters, if it's clear that they know you well and that they are really supportive and enthusiastic about you, and they can give specific examples of why they're so enthusiastic. So if the person wants to demonstrate that you're a leader, it can help if they give specific examples about how you demonstrated leadership. And I'll be emailing the recommenders and giving them some additional advice about this. But these letters are really the best letters are kind of their own essays about you. And if you can get letters like that, that's wonderful. You only have so much control over the letters. And they don't all have to be stunning, but really great letters can make a huge difference because they're more objective evaluations of who you are. You're getting someone else to say that you're phenomenal. It's not just you kind of saying that, it's someone else supporting that. And so those letters are important. I think that's what I'll say about the letters for now. One more point. Keep the criteria in mind. And keep in mind that the criteria are different for these three. And it doesn't mean you need a completely different personal statement. But depending on the time you have, you take that into account. And if you want a personal statement to apply to Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell, 2 of them, 3 of them, make sure that it covers the basis for all of the ones that you're planning to submit it for. So for Rhodes, the criteria, and these are on their website, scholarly, and I think they're on the campus application too. Yeah, for Rhodes they are. Scholarly attainment, health and vigor, care for and protection of the weak, which is kind of service, and instinct to lead. Okay, so they want to see that you have an instinct to be a leader, that you are doing something that indicates that you care for the weak, that you have vigor. And this doesn't, if you are an athlete, you might bring that up somehow, or at least have it appear on your list. If you're not, that's completely fine. But you might, you want if you've done something somewhat adventurous, like teaching in Uganda, for instance, you might get that in there somewhere to indicate that you have this vigor. Um, and scholarly attainment, which is probably the easiest thing to demonstrate. It's going to be partially transcripts. It will also be demonstrated from your academic letters. For the Marshall, the three criteria are academics, leadership, and ambassadorial potential. So you see there's a lot of overlap there, academics, leadership, but this ambassadorial potential is different. And what's nice, though, is that in Marshall you get a whole essay to talk about that, so it doesn't necessarily have to get into the personal statement. But, letter writers, if somebody's willing to kind of tweak their letter a little bit for Marshall, you may have them address that criterion. For the Mitchell Scholarship, it's academics, it's leadership again, and then it's service, which connects again kind of to the Rhodes. So they don't have this ambassadorial potential interest. They are trying to introduce you to Ireland, and they would like you to want to remain connected to Ireland. But service is very important to them. They want to see people who have made a difference in service, and ideally have taken a leadership role in serving people. That's Mitchell's particular interest. So make sure that you don't have to go through in your essay and say, I have a demonstrated scholarly attainment because blah. But you do want to make sure that if you go through your essay and you have these criteria next to you, you can check off parts of your essay that address these things. Like, okay, they could see that I'm a leader because of this, or they'll see that I'm a leader because this person is going to write a letter talking about how great of a leader I am. So, when they review the applications, they know these criteria. And they're trying to pick the best Rhodes Scholar, Marshall Scholar, Mitchell Scholar. They want you to fit. They're not picking the best person. They're picking the best fit for these particular awards. Okay, so I'll close here. We're already a little bit over time, and thanks most of you for staying. And maybe we can do this again, maybe next week. But my plan is to send you initial feedback on your essay drafts by the middle of next week. I got right now 27 essays, so I had anticipated maybe Monday, but I think it's going to take a little bit longer. So I'll get you some initial feedback by the middle of next week, and then the timeline. After that, I see another question here. That's why I'm leaning forward and peering. I'll answer that in a second. The campus deadline will be August 26th, so I'll get you some feedback. We can maybe do another one of these because many of you probably won't be here yet. If you are going to be on campus, we could set up a meeting. We could always Skype one-on-one too. But after that initial feedback, if you want, we can meet, go over some more drafts if there's time. But the campus deadline will be August 26th. That's when you have to submit the entire campus application. And you should all have that. If you need me to resend it to you, send me an email and I will do that. But that's going to include the letters of recommendation. We will need those by August 26th. If your recommenders ask, and I'll tell them this, but you can make sure to know that they would have the opportunity to revise their letters if they wanted to, but that the letters they submit on August 26th will be what is used in the campus endorsement process. Then, after August 26th, the campus committee will review the applications. They will invite some of the people who submit to interview during the week of September 9th. It's possible that not everyone who submits the campus application will receive an interview. That's really up to the committee. And one thing to note is that I don't make any of these endorsement decisions, and I won't. This applies to Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell, and anything else. My goal is to help you submit, the strongest application you can for these deadlines. So, I will help you as much as you want help, but I will be honest with you if I think that if, for instance, if after reading your essay draft, or, if at some point I think you might be more competitive for other opportunities, or that it would be difficult to be competitive for this, I will be honest with you about that. And again, not to, hopefully you won't take that personally, but I don't want you spending a ton of time on this if the chances are slim. For instance, so it's possible that the committee will not interview everyone who submits, but they might. You would know probably by the week of September 2nd, you would know if you received an interview. The interviews will be the week of September 9th. Decisions should be made about endorsements by the end of that week, and then you will have until September 27th, which is a Friday, to make revisions to your application. At that point, after the decisions have been made about endorsements, I will provide you with information about the online application, because you ultimately submit these things online, and your recommenders will submit their letters online as well. So you'll get more information about that. Everything should be in the online system by September 27th. That's a few days before the formal final deadlines, but we really want to make sure everything is in there by September 27th. Just to make sure it's there. And also we have to submit endorsement letters from the institution for all of you, and it's easier to do that if your information's in place by then. Then the Mitchell applicants will do a video interview the week of September 30th. You'll have to do it by the end of that week, I think October 4th. And I'll give you more information about that later. I wouldn't worry about it too much now. Then there's a semi-final round just for the Mitchell, where they will do Skype interviews with certain semi-finalists the week of October 28th. Everyone will hear if they get a finalist interview by early November. You might hear in late October, but by the first week of November, typically people hear whether they've received finalist interviews. Last year there were some delays, so it took till mid-November, but it should be early November. And then the people who get interviews will be doing mock interview scenarios throughout November. The interviews typically take place in mid-November for the Marshall and the weekend before Thanksgiving for Mitchell and Rhodes. If you got invited to an interview for Mitchell and Rhodes, you'd have to pick which one you wanted to pursue, because the interviews happen at the same time. And we can talk more about that at that point. By the weekend before Thanksgiving, by the end of those Mitchell and Rhodes interviews, everyone will know the results. So you'll know pretty soon. I guess, a final thing I want to say is that for Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell, you do not apply directly to any of these universities. But if you wanted to, you could. You could apply separately to these institutions, and you could gain admission on your own, and it's possible that you would receive funding. I know last year and in years past we've had people from Notre Dame win the Clarendon Scholarship to Oxford, which is an internal Oxford award that does offer full funding for a graduate degree. So this is a person who went through the process and ended up not receiving one of the Rhodes, for instance, but got this Clarendon Award, which is very hard to receive, and is planning to go there and can do this anyway. So, and Cambridge has their own awards. Most of these institutions do. They have full tuition, half tuition awards. So if you really are interested in studying in the UK, there are some other possibilities besides these scholarships. So if you are interested in applying separately, that's something you would want to be working on in the fall, usually, because many of the funding deadlines are October 15th or around then. And those applications are usually not as complicated as these are, but if you were interested in going to these places anyway, you might look into what kind of funding they have for international students, and you might want to go ahead and apply separately. It's something to think about. So I'll leave it at that. We've gone for quite some time here. And I do think it's possible we'll do, after I've sent feedback to everyone, maybe we could do another one of these. Maybe we can even set up group chats among certain segments of the people who are applying. So I will be making this video available online if you want to review it. I will make the essays that we looked at today available online. I'll email you about that when that's done. And thank you all for coming. And if any questions, of course, come up before you hear from me next week, feel free to email me at any time. So I'm glad this worked. I hope it was helpful. And I look forward to working with you further on this. So I'm going to end the broadcast now. Thank you.